Beneath the surface is a special place. Beneath the surface is where extraordinary happens. Designations, visiting cards, fancy cars. Now, whatever may lie on the surface, delve a little deeper, and that's where you will find the hunter-gatherer, the predator. That's where you will find lurking the real, way beneath the surface.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of A Done Deal, a podcast where we get unique, relatable perspectives on entrepreneurship and leadership as seen from the eyes of seasoned entrepreneurs and investors. It is a great pleasure to introduce my guest today, Alfredo Ramos. Alfredo is the managing director of CPI Enterprises, and CPI is the UK-based technology innovation center and is a part of the government's high-value manufacturing Catapult. So with more than 20 years of experience in the process-based industries, he has worked in a diverse range of senior leadership and management roles spanning research and development, engineering, operations, across a range of sectors such as chemicals, pharma, and energy. Alfredo holds a graduate chemical engineering degree and an MBA from London Business School, where incidentally he was my classmate. Alfredo, a very warm welcome to A Done Deal.
Thanks so much, Keshav. Really good to be here.
Alfredo, you're currently spearheading CPI Enterprises, which is the Center for Process Innovation, or the CPI's investor engagement and ventures arm. And you're focused primarily on forging strong relationships with the private investment community to stimulate impactful investments into high growth, early stage companies. Could you please share with us a little more about the sort of work that you're leading?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, well perhaps I should share some information about CPI and what we do. And
Sure.
You probably think about the traditional R&D center where you just work at the technology. It's very early stage, and you're trying to bring it or inch it towards commercialization. Actually, we operate at a much later stage. And this is really about once you have a certain proof of concept, how can I take that technology to a fully commercial product, process, or service? And that is actually where most companies actually fail, and particularly in the what I would call hard tech or deep tech space is where you have a massive challenge. Because if you think about it, compared to the tech space, and tech I define as fintech, software as a service, etc., the capital requirements to bring these companies forward are much larger. The size of the rounds initially are much larger to really make some progress. So that's where we come in, and that's where we have basically, if you think about it, are the what I call the innovation assets. It's basically the labs, the equipment, the people, crucially, that can help these companies get to that point where they can clinch investment, have a very clear direction of how they are going to, what roadmap they need to follow to commercialize that particular product or service. Okay. And that's where we come in. If you think, we help companies operate in a virtual manner where they can actually access all our resources and move towards the point where they can attract investors. And within that, let's say, if you look at that ecosystem and think about an ecosystem, for example, in the UK of government actually funding early stage research at the universities and having great success in that, but also funding some of the entrepreneurs to help them along their journey with some of the grants that are available in the UK or even at European level with the Horizon programs and similar.
Yes.
It provides quite a high level of support, and then you have organizations like ours and in the UK other Catapult centers that can help these entrepreneurs move forward.
Okay.
However, a key component that we have seen is the ability of these entrepreneurs to raise private investment. And to give you an idea of we did a study and looked at all the companies that we had supported between 2016 and 2019, and what transpires very clearly is that for every pound of public investment that has gone into these companies, they will need another about 10 times the same amount in terms of private investment to get anywhere near to market.
Wow.
And that's where it basically got us thinking and said, hang on a second, are we not missing a trick? yes, we've helped companies clinch that funding, but we've done that simply by helping them on their technology development. But if you think about it, we're not about developing technologies. We're about developing technology companies.
Yes.
So therefore, if that's the case, shouldn't we be helping them as well on the investment front? And that's where the idea of enterprises came alive, is to think, hang on a second, how can we create that ecosystem? How can we create that, partnership of different interests that will help actually scale those companies that have something that is truly innovative and something that can really disrupt these markets? We're not about incremental innovation. It's really about things that can shake up the world.
Okay. So what's your team composition like then? Do you have engineers and salespeople and strategists? How does that work?
Very good point. So think about mothership, CPI, that's where we have all that. We have strategists, we have scientists, looking at, to give you an example, we're actually part of the UK vaccine task force, working on one of the COVID-19 vaccines together with Imperial College.
Okay.
And that vaccine is one of the RNA vaccines that needed a particular mechanism to be delivered to the body at the right place.
Okay.
And at the right time. So actually, some of our scientists have worked together with academics in the UK on a new technology to provide lipid nanoparticles that would encapsulate that RNA or any other active matter, would deliver it safely there where it's needed.
Okay.
Suddenly that technology became key to that particular effort. So that's our scientists. We also have engineers that then will take that new technology and say, okay, fine, we can do it in the lab, but we need to do it now in let's say, a scale that would allow us to roll out that vaccine in the UK and worldwide. What do we need?
Yep.
And then we have expert teams of lawyers that actually look at how you best secure IP, how you make sure that these companies that are working with us are well protected and can secure their intellectual property position. Within our team, then in enterprises, what we needed to add is lots of capability in terms of understanding how to build those ecosystems. That's what we put together our investor relationship management function.
Right.
We have people that are just dedicated and they're simply to connect different people and understand, connect the dots and understand who needs to talk to whom and when and what are the keys that are really relevant. And then we've built our own investment analysis team. So really we've mirrored all the processes, capabilities that you would fund in a traditional venture capital fund. We've mirrored that internally so that we can converse in the same terms, but also understand the value drivers and also at the same time come in as co-investor at times. And that's basically what we have built out there. And these are people with a technology background, but seasoned in the venture capital space.
So the concept on the whole is similar to that of a startup studio or a venture studio. Is that is that correct?
Indeed, and I think that concept brings together a number of assets that I would say are essential and essential to really, I would say, unlock a new model of venture capital. If you think about it, venture capitals, what they've done is have the financial assets in place. Teams that are savvy about that investment piece and manage the regulatory piece about it. But I think what that is missing, is the innovation assets, which is how can you fast track those companies? How can you make sure that those investments are as capital efficient as possible? Why should you duplicate capabilities that are already existing on the ground? And you actually can use things that are already there. But I think there's one key ingredient that is still missing in that, and that's what the venture studio provides, which is how can you add the entrepreneurial assets? And how can you bring in the expertise of people that have been there, done that, and have scaled up businesses and bring that to the mix? Then suddenly you have the financial mind or the investment mind, you have the technology and science mind, and you have also entrepreneur in there. And that to me makes it really, really attractive as a concept.
Yeah. Because a lot of venture funds often invest in first-time founders only, and somehow the level of success is quite limited. In fact, if I was interpreting the data correctly, It is sorry, 11 out of 12 startups fail, and that's because I suppose due to the lack of that experience, in addition to the entrepreneurial drive that is required to scale up businesses. Because as entrepreneurs, you might be great at something, but instead of playing to your strengths, you're thinking of inside the building. How do you, for example, build a financial model? How do you look at building the go-to-market strategy? Something which is not your strength. You should instead be out there, out of the building, speaking to the users, speaking to the market, figuring out what to do next, finding that product market fit. So it's incredible. And what's the biggest surprise that you've had in the last few months, given what's going around?
That's a very good question, actually. I think there have been a number of things, but perhaps let's say within the personal realm and what everything we've been experiencing with this COVID-19, what I've been surprised is by the ability of people to select pieces of information. I wouldn't even say data, but pieces of information at their convenience, and use it to make normally either a political statement or a preference or justify a certain kind of behavior. There's a good Isaac Asimov quote that I've come to learn only recently in the last few weeks.
Okay.
Where basically the quote is a bit larger
Sure.
or longer than that, but I think that the key bit is one that says, the strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just good as your knowledge. And that's something that, if you think about it, how often do we have people that completely rely on a scientist or a medic when it comes to particular treatment of their illness?
Yes.
But then we'll question that expert in terms of their advice as to how to deal with this crisis.
Yeah. But hang on a second. There's Google, right?
Exactly.
And there's WhatsApp University.
Indeed.
As Mahatma Gandhi once said, never believe everything you receive as a WhatsApp forward. So, yeah.
He was always ahead of his time, isn't he?
But on a serious note, COVID-19 has indeed thrown a spanner in the works for a number of people who are looking to get into entrepreneurship or launch their own ventures. Based on your personal experience of dealing with founders, entrepreneurs on a daily basis, what's your advice to them? In addition to sticking to one's vision, playing the game, looking at cash flow, etc., what unique insights can you present?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I would say particularly, because the type of entrepreneurs that we deal with don't come from the tech space, right? This is not your normal fintech, software as a service, light asset, data-rich type of startup. We grounded on what you would call hard or deep tech. So traditionally, these are people that come from science and technology, but very close to the base. I think there are particular challenges in that space because obviously, if you have something that's very capital intensive from the start, it's quite hard to fund. And I have some statistics in mind from Pittsburgh and Bohurst that indicate that the flows of capital into tech-based businesses are about, during the last 4 or 5 years, are about 2.5 times that of hard tech or deep tech businesses. I think why? Of course, tech, and let's say, before joining CPI, I spent 12 years in a tech company. That was a spin-out from Imperial College, but there's obviously value to be had from tech, but actually, what is going to solve the main challenges that we have in our society? That is actually that deep tech aspect, right? When it comes to climate change, to a quicker turnaround of vaccines, or a change in paradigm in healthcare towards preventative, personalized care, the key thing, this is going to come from deep tech. But they're harder to fund, right? So starting from that premise, I think that there's the advice that I would give is first, think about the relevance of the ecosystem. Okay, you can't do it all by yourself as an entrepreneur. There's a very interesting study from Harvard Business School. A gentleman called a person, should I say, because I haven't checked the gender, but it's irrelevant to the discussion. It's a paper by Noam Wasserman, who's from 2006. Most people know it under Founder's Dilemma. And he basically, or she, looked at a mix of over 400 companies and looked at which ones succeeded and how did they succeed. The main point that he made is that companies fall into or early stage companies, fall into two categories or three categories, right? Some that simply fail and flop. Others where the founders keep control and remain what's called the king.
Yes.
And then others where they actually relinquish control but achieve great financial success. And what you can see is a direct correlation between level of control and the financial returns for the founders. And perhaps a bit counterintuitively or intuitively, depending on your background, what he found was that correlation was indirectly proportional, right? The more control you maintain of your business as a founder, the less you will be able to seek returns. But the key point of his paper as well, and I think that this is the largely known part, but the key point of his paper is, well, what if you were to create something that makes you, as he called, rich and regal?
Okay.
Right? Which is basically that combination of retaining control and achieving those large capital gains. And the conclusion was actually that human capital, so identifying very quickly who are your key areas of support and who might be able to deliver and input, capital, and not from the monetary kind, but all sorts of, whether it's networking, whether it's actually expertise in a particular area, those are the ones that are going to succeed. Right? And those are the ones that have the highest chance. We've extrapolated it, we call it, rather than human capital, we call it ecosystem capital. Is how quickly can you identify what are the key supporters? Or think about from the investment side, which investors are going to give you that opportunity to reach out into the different assets that you need, right? And that brings us back to the venture story, thinking about what are the financial assets that you need, what are the entrepreneurial assets that you will need in that journey, and thirdly, what are the innovation assets that you will require, how you can best leverage them. And that's just some things that brings us back to very simple things, like if you think about an early stage business that needs to recruit or spend 6 months recruiting someone, first of all, you have to be hopeful that someone is competent enough, and hopefully you selected well. But then also you have to get along with these people.
Yes.
And if it doesn't work out, and that can happen, right? There's just affinity between people and things, you will have to find another person.
Yes.
And you will have to lose another 3 to 6 months to bring that person in. And all that time you've been drawing that on that hard fundraise cash. Now, finding out who could help you in that role and use that stuff is a way of actually being able to scale and in a more nimble way. And the other thing that I would suggest is, the power of being surrounded by the right people. And here today, actually, exactly today, I learned of a quote by a gentleman with the surname Packard. It was the same gentleman as Hewlett Packard.
Okay.
That basically said, no company can consistently grow revenues faster than its ability to get enough of the right people to implement that growth. So no matter which stage you're at, you really need to start thinking about how you build a team, how you build the right culture, the right environment for that team to succeed. And I think that sometimes that, probably entrepreneurs will struggle with that, right? Because of that doggedness and that single-mindedness of entrepreneurs to move ahead.
Yes. Wiser words have never been said, as they say. I like the concept of ecosystem capital. I'll steal that, Alfredo.
More than happy to.
How is CPI Enterprises galvanizing that change and adding value? We
Yeah,
touched upon it at the outset of this conversation, but more
yeah,
specifically
yeah,
about ecosystems.
definitely. I think what we're trying to do, really, and hopefully we'll do it well. We're
Mm,
very at the very early start of our journey, but is we're creating those ecosystems, right? We're
okay,
engaging very early with the universities. We're having
okay.
discussions with some of the entrepreneurs even before they incorporated the company.
Hmm,
So we can help them and work
fascinating.
together with the technology transfer offices very, very early. At
Okay,
the same time, we're engaging as well with innovators in that space. And why people hear about that is people who enable that innovation. And that could be
okay,
anything from experts in IP law to corporate financiers, etc. But just
okay,
building those connections and that connectivity.
okay,
Also understanding how we can influence as well policy. And it's to say, right, look, this is what we're seeing on the ground. This is what it's needed, and feed
okay.
that back to policymakers. And
Hmm,
finally, I would say is building links as well to the other element, which is corporations, right? If you think about it,
mhm.
the traditional, and I think we both agree on this, but I'll test something with you. I do think that the traditional venture capital model is that of a funnel, right?
Yes.
Which is about identifying a number of opportunities and then
Yep.
bringing those last few ones and try to grow
Yep.
those. Whereas actually, I think the right model will be a funnel followed with
Yep.
an amplification, if you wish. And
Yep.
obviously bring those target corporates, those that could be potential clients or could be
Yep.
sales and distribution partners
Yep.
very early on into the process.
Yes.
You're creating something that has a genuine advantage.
Yes.
And that's where I believe that's how we're creating that value.
Yes.
Apart from that, we're taking active positions in companies, so we're investing
Okay.
in a number of companies.
Okay.
Obviously, this is not done for altruistic reasons. We're
Of course.
selecting those where we think
Yep.
have a high chance of a return that we can reinvest again in our assets. And obviously, being an innovation center, you always have to be at the forefront of technology, and that moves very quickly. So we have to continuously make large capital investments.
Yes.
But at the same time, we hope as well that can galvanize some investment into those companies.
Right. Right. Do you have a particular investment thesis for the investments, or is there should I say a one size fits all approach to looking at businesses? Is there something very specific, just so that the users can relate to it?
I think I would say we have a leitmotif, and that basically is given just by the nature of our organization, right? CPI, the mothership, is a non-for-profit. Okay, that's our first point.
Okay.
The second point is our vision as a company, which is there to create a better environment and a healthier society.
Okay.
And drive economic growth. Okay, so if you consider these, then that brings down to a leitmotif in terms of understanding how do we invest. First of all, believe that any investment has to be a financial return, right? If you don't expect a financial return, you're in the area possibly of philanthropy, and we're not a philanthropy organization. So
yes,
it's a hobby, and there are better organizations that can do that much better than we can.
Yes.
At the same time, so while that is a strong, let's say that's the given condition.
Yes.
Then there's two key elements, right? If we're continuously developing and unlocking those technologies of the future, there has to be a strategic component that guides us and says, look, these are technologies that we believe are going to disrupt the world in 5 to 10 years' time. So we need to look at that. And then there's another element, and that's mainly driven by a non-for-profit nature, which is impact, right? So where can you find the strongest impact in the well-being of people or in how we reduce CO2 emissions? This is something that drives us there. So that's that high level. The second layer or lens, if you wish, that we use to look at those investments is where can we provide crucial capability, right? Okay. And that's where in our organization we have very strong expertise in biotherapeutics, in pharma manufacturing, in medtech, particularly thinking about diagnostics, biotechnology with a focus on food and nutraceuticals, and agri-tech, and finally electronics. When I say electronics, I'm referring to flexible electronics, things that low cost, high volume electronics that you can use in IoT solutions, for example.
Got it.
So that is our second lens. Whenever we can use that capability that we have on the ground and really fast track those companies, that would be our sweet spot.
Right. Fascinating. I'm actually quite impressed that you provided that background, so beautifully with the layered structure. Also amazed that you didn't use the words AI, ML, DL, blockchain even once.
Well, to be fair, there's a particular area that I find fascinating, and what I think it's valid. If you think about how or the challenges that we have ahead as a society, you think about problems around climate change, personalization. When I refer to personalization, it could be drugs, that could be different types of treatment, that could be the latest cell and gene therapies, but that could be simply just having cosmetics that are specific to one's skin type, right? So think about all these challenges. Those will need new materials, new types of formulating these materials, new types of getting these products to a patient or a consumer. So that scenario is quite relevant. Now, if you look at that space, right, and look at how that innovation is being done, and let's say, let us deep dive a bit into pharma, right? In pharma, you've seen in the last 10 years, the peak sales for a particular asset half, from about 800 million to about 400 million in 2018. You've seen returns on R&D going down from about 10% in 2010 to about, less than 2% in 2019. And you've seen the cost to bring a new drug to market basically double to about 2 billion. Now, if you think about it, because of peak sales being halved, you actually need more products in your pipeline to be able to replenish those sales. Think about companies like, for example, AbbVie with Humira. It's about 67% of the sales. Now, how are you going to replace that? So you have a very strong pipeline, and then suddenly an area where before wasn't paid much attention, which is about how one thing is drug discovery. There's plenty of AI, ML in that space. But then is the drug development phase, right? How do you get that to
That's
clinic?
the difficult part.
And that's an area where I believe plenty of people have been focusing on the data analytics in a space where actually data accessibility is not there, and data generation is not automated. So where I see a massive opportunity is actually how can you make those R&D labs, where really you find those materials that are going to change our world in the next 20 years, how can you get them to a state where they're fully automated and where our scientists and technologists and engineers don't have to spend time pipetting, to give you an example, but actually thinking about the output of those experiments. Don't do repetitive tasks. Don't do tasks that don't require your gray matter to work. Use your brain in the right way and use the data in the right way, and develop those insights that we need to fast track that development. That to me is an area that is very exciting. And I think I see something coming in there, and that intersection of AI, AML, and more hardcore, robotics. So there you go. I said those words.
No blockchain?
Blockchain is, I think it's key. Sorry, you're absolutely right, particularly in the pharmaceutical space. I don't see how we're going to do personalized medicines if we don't have that middle layer that can give the trust between patient and drug developer and any intermediate in there, but at the same time obfuscate, the data of the patient. The back, for example, for pharma and medtech, I think is also the key to new reimbursement models, right? If you think about outcomes-based reimbursement models, you need to monitor the patient's well-being, but you need to do so in a way that protects the patient's privacy. And again, that to me, blockchain has a crucial role to play.
Absolutely. So back in the day, I think about 10 years ago, I worked for a pharmaceutical data company dealing with treatment regimes, treatments and regimes, should I say, and the impact of various drugs and comorbidities, events on treatment outcomes. And if we had used blockchain back in the day, then yes, patient data anonymity and amongst other things could have been safeguarded. And I suppose it's pretty much the same with other industries as well, where people are building layers between various participants in an ecosystem, so that metadata can be exchanged across different parties, and that's the space to watch. Are you watching? If there's one space that you would say, is something one should look at for the next 5 years, yeah, what space would that be?
Wow, tough question. I think just because of my particular interest, I think that space of robotics coupled with adequate data acquisition and integration plus AI, ML, and the blockchain side of things is extremely interesting. And if you ask me for an end application, I would say, and this might be controversial, is my opinion, and plenty of people will say that I'm wrong. But I think the pharmaceutical sector is exactly the same point that the retail sector found itself during the early noughties, so before Amazon, and which is logistics was seen as something that could be low value, could be outsourced, right? And I think for pharma that is manufacturing right now. Manufacturing is about 5 to 10% of the cost of goods in an industry where cost of goods doesn't relate to your pricing.
Yes.
And it's been primarily outsourced.
Yes.
Lots of focus on making things modular, so you have more bidders, and there's price competition among contract manufacturing organizations. And I do believe that if it's not Amazon, an Amazon-like organization will come out and will demonstrate how you manufacture those products and how close you can get to your end customer, the patient, is going to be key. And it's going to be a value-add activity and a differentiator. Okay. And we know famously what happened with retail and Amazon, right?
For all you know, Amazon could have its new division coming up after listening to this podcast.
Well, they've bought PillPack for $1 billion, so I believe that they're making their move in that space.
There's something in the works, so let's watch this space over the next few years, and time will tell.
Indeed.
Alfredo, what's so you've been in this space for the last couple of decades now. Process optimization, automation. What's the one common myth about your profession that you want to debunk? If someone had to, or should I say, if someone was in a position where they were looking to start their career and they wanted to get into, a career similar to yours, what would your advice be to that person?
Yeah. So in terms of common myth, I would say, and you have to keep in mind, I trained, so my master's or diploma engineer, as it was called back in Germany, was in biochemical / process engineering, right? So very heavy science-based maths, heavy discipline. I've seen it throughout my career in that space. Engineers, and to a certain point scientists, tend to believe that science is the only thing that matters, right? And that is the hard bit. We are solving the hard bit. We're solving the difficult part. And then salespeople and marketing people and other people come in and they don't do anything, right? They're just fluff, but they get the rewards. And to be frank with you, I was like that. I thought that very same way. And I probably bet that you saw that in me as a classmate at LBS, and I think the LBS experience was absolutely crucial for me to realizing that.
Right.
The levels of uncertainty that you have in the entrepreneurial, commercial, sales, marketing world are just 2-3 orders of magnitude. That what you would find in, let's say, in the technology space or the applied science space, right? I mean, if you're at the very early stage of thinking about new quantum states and so on, we have exactly the same level of uncertainty, right? If you divide new laws and new ways of describing systems, you might be there. Normally, I would say for 95% of the population, you're on the other side. And actually, that's something that I would wish, and I would tell my colleagues to say, is like, look, you have to think the world is much more complex, and the further away you get from technology, the more complex it gets.
Yes.
And that's something that people not always realize, and people, I would say, in my profession or in my field. In terms of the advice that I would give someone that is starting a career in this space, or to be frank with you, any career, I would have 3 takeaways, to be honest, or actually 4.
Okay.
One would be always strive for more and find your passion. Okay.
Sure.
What I'm meaning with this is you constantly need to seek new development opportunities.
Okay.
You need to be curious. You need to try new things. People, very few people, like Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal, who find their passion straight away. I want to play tennis for the rest of my life. The rest of us, and I include myself in that, we just need to try things. I need to try to really find what we want. And the value of lifelong learning is essential there. Right? And that's basically what drove me to my to applying for LBS and joining our cohort and learning from you and all our colleagues in that space. And that really brought me in a completely different level, I would say, in terms of understanding myself and what I wanted to be.
Right.
The other thing is, I would say, work hard and enjoy your success. Do a bit more than you have to. I don't think anyone has ever succeeded in just doing enough. You always have to do a bit more, right? And I think the other bit is celebrate your achievements. Do really celebrate them, right? Failure is part of the process, so you need to celebrate what you achieve.
Correct.
And share them with those around you. Share them with those that have helped you to get there. Nobody can achieve things on their own. And whoever says, I did all this by myself, I think you're kidding yourself.
Yes.
The third point would be, and that comes back to failure. It's part of the process, okay? So learn from it. Just embrace it. I myself, for example, I didn't finish my PhD, right? I wrote 78 pages of my PhD thesis. I never submitted it. And that was something I was stuck in, or was like a dagger to my heart for years.
Right.
Till I understood, what? I learned quite a bit from that. And I always, in this dealing with failure, I always like, there's a Michael Jordan quote that basically says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I was trusted with the game-winning shot. I missed it. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. And I think that's something people should take to heart. And we talk about it, but I don't think we haven't embraced it. And yes, failure will be a bitter pill to swallow. It was bitter for me not being able to finish that PhD. I also had a venture with a work colleague that didn't go anywhere. There was also failure, and it was bitter, but I learned a lot from it, to be honest. And then the fourth piece of advice would be, do not let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Go out there, prove them wrong through your drive and your effort, and show that. But just for yourself, because for what you care. And I think very often in our society, I think particularly Western societies, we tend to cut people's wings, and make sure that they stick to their box. And another thing is clip them. And I think it's just the wrong approach. So don't ever let people tell that to you. So that would be my advice.
You are really resilient, Alfredo. I'm quite curious. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood and teenage life? Because that essentially shapes the rest of your life, right?
Yeah, Stu. I was born in Tenerife, so Canary Islands, part of Spain, but off the coast of Africa. So subtropical waters, brilliant weather the whole year round.
Rains once a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so lots of opportunity to be outside, and enjoy nature. And there's also safe waters, right? We don't have venomous snakes, or there are some sharks, but they're not big enough, and they're not around the woods. So you can enjoy life outside a lot. And I think it was one of the experiences that helped me. I think the other one was I went to German school since I was a kid, so I might be Spanish from birthplace and family, but all my education has been German since I was
Okay.
6-7 years old. So
Mm.
that kind of marks you as well. Very early on, I remember I had to decide. So basically, we had all our subjects were in German, except for Spanish, English, French, and religion. And biology, you had to decide whether you wanted to do it in German or Spanish. I very early decided, I think I was 12 years old, that I wanted to do that in German because I wanted to study in German. So that was something that marked me. And then obviously that key experience, right? Leaving home when you're 17. And I will always remember, spending a week in Germany with my father, trying to sort out, university admission and finding a place to live and all these things, for which I'm always grateful to my father. He doesn't speak a word of German.
Okay.
He managed to sort out everything. I was the translator there only, which was for a point. But I will always remember him, taking him to Düsseldorf airport,
Okay.
and leaving him at the gate.
Okay.
And that moment where you realize you're alone, and the closest person that that knows you is 3,000 kilometers away. And this is per internet, okay? So, you would write to people and it would take 6 weeks to get there and come back. And phone was there, but it was terribly expensive. It was not a privatist market, so there was not that much choice. So you had very limited interaction, and just being completely alone in a place where you don't know anyone. That marks you. And what I did, to be frank, one of the key things that I did, I mean, I always love sports, and I've done any kind of sport. I'm a keen rower. I'm now into cycling, but I've done anything you name it. I've probably done it. And at that time, I used to play lots of football or soccer for audiences. And I do remember just going to parks on my own, trying to find people playing, just holding up my hand and say, "Hey, can I join you guys?"
Okay.
And you just try to learn from that. So hope that gives an idea of that, multicultural environment. The fact that I've worked and lived in 3 different countries. I've been 14 years in the UK, 11 in Germany, and the rest in Spain.
Fascinating. How many languages do you speak, Alfredo?
Let's say my core languages are German, Spanish, and English. I do speak a very little of French, just simply because I had it at school. But right now, because I'm practicing, it's just enough to get by, order food, book a hotel room. And then Italian, I happen to have a relationship with an Italian woman in the past, so that basically allowed me to learn the language for a few years. Right. But again, if you don't practice it, you lose it.
Okay. So you do know the Italian hand gestures and everything.
Oh yeah, there's some words you never forget.
Oh boy. But that explains a lot about the resilience and the fantastic versatility, should I say, that you bring, Alfredo. What sort of mentors did you have in your early years? People who are formative to your career.
Yeah. Wow, that's a tricky question. I would say, there's a couple of school teachers, I will always remember, just because of their approach to teaching and what they taught us. But I would say, if I were to think about the ones that had most impact in my career, I would come down to 3 people. One would be one of my supervisors in Germany, Professor Wolfgang Marquardt. Outstanding engineer. To give an idea, he won the Leibniz Prize, which is one of the highest or the highest award in Germany for maths, and he was the first engineer that won it, not mathematician.
Wow.
He went on as well to lead the German Wissenschaftsrat, which is like the research council for Germany. So fantastic scientist, but again, what I took with me is how much he cared about people as well. How much he cared about people in his team. And even though I'm in contact with him every couple of years, he's always there to have a word. He's always there to listen to that. So that I appreciate, how someone who's so skilled can still be very human. At times that is at odds with each other. And I think that was a person that brought both. The other one would be my first CEO. And this was at a public company. I was joined as a production manager. I joined a water utility in Spain, and I think what marked me was the fact that the company was going to be privatized. It was like a 60 million euro cash deal plus over 100 million in investments in infrastructure and so on. And just by lack of draw, I was just chosen to be in the team of 4 people, including the CEO that would look at this transaction. It was the first time that I moved away from that engineering world where I was presented with financial and commercial world. And that was, key experience. I think someone that, to give you an idea, we're meant to be having 90 days to deliver that piece of work, but because of the city council needed to secure 210 million from the European Union to go about other infrastructure projects that they want to do. That's where they wanted the cash for, and that's why they privatized the company for.
Right.
We were only given 45 days. We had to do it straight away. So we spent. I was literally arriving at around 7:30 a.m. and I didn't leave till 2-3 a.m. on the next day, and we did that for 45 days. I remember the last 2 days we didn't sleep, worked through. So it brings you very close to people, and we had our differences.
Sure.
But I learned a lot from his approach, from his passion. He always used to say, "Leña al mono que es de goma," which means something like, hit the monkey as hard as you can. It's made out of rubber. It's like an expression in Spanish that means, if you have the resilience, if you have the stamina to do it, just take it and bring it to another level.
Yep.
And the final reason why I would name him is a very sad one. It is, even. We finished this study on the 29th of December. I remember the dates. And we presented at the City Hall at 11 p.m. at night after a couple of days of not sleeping.
Okay.
2 days later, we did a breakfast for the team that had worked in that. And I will always remember, this was the 31st of December, 2005. And it was a Saturday. And I remember him getting into his Audi A6 and say, "Alfredo, you can be sure that the companies that didn't win this tender, that they will sue. So we need to be prepared for that. I'll see you 8 o'clock on Monday."
Right.
Which was the 2nd, right?
Right.
"I'll see you then on Monday. We'll start working on that." I never saw him again. He died. He was admitted to hospital straight away. He died within 2 weeks of cancer. And had been complaining all the time about some pain that he had, and we thought it was a sports injury. So it's something that obviously was deeply sad because was someone who had been a senior executive at a large corporation in Spain, and then had decided to take on this role to do something transformational for the community that he was from originally.
Right.
And he worked extremely hard that didn't manage to get there. So that experience, I think, is something that stayed with me. And the final one is a gentleman who was actually my mentor at London Business School.
Okay.
And it's a gentleman called Jose Manuel Garnica, who's I actually was talking to him just a couple of weeks back. Fantastic individual, someone who's made a senior executive in the oil and gas industry, and made a transition into healthcare. And he's now a senior executive at a large pharmaceutical corporation. Fantastic with people, someone who deeply cared about me and about my family, even about how we were doing, and someone who gave me absolutely crucial advice at critical points. So this would be my top 3.
Excellent. I mean, the stories that you shared, they were really touching. So how do you choose mentors in your life? There are thousands of people who are very experienced. There are people who are accomplished, but then they are great at what they do, but they can't really impart that experience and connect with other people. Just because you're good at something does not make you a great teacher, right? Similarly, just because you're great at something does not make you a great mentor. So how do you go about processing such a vital piece of the jigsaw in your life?
Yeah. I'm not sure you will find answers in me, to be honest, because I think I've been just lucky, to be honest. I think this is probably one of the things I need to work on. It's been a matter of serendipity so far, right?
Okay.
I didn't know that my first mentor was an absolute expert and one of the top 5 academics in that space worldwide.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any further criteria back then.
Right.
I think then later on, again, it was my CEO. I just had luck of draw, happened to be chosen to be part of that team. So it was not an active. I think probably what I would have learned is one thing that is extremely important is networking, right? And getting to know people and expanding your horizon. And lifelong learning does not only means it doesn't mean reading books.
Yep.
It just means living. Right?
Yeah.
It also means reading books.
Of
it also
course.
means having this conversation with you and having an exchange with you on a regular basis and with other people. So I think what I probably have managed to recognize is who are the people who were teaching me something I didn't know? Who are the people who really are opening up a new part of my brain or a new way of thinking or a new way of doing things?
Yep.
And just being open and embrace that. Embrace that there's someone there who cares and who's willing to give you something. It's just a matter of saying, like, fine, brilliant, let me take that on board and let me use that.
And what about passing it forward? Do you mentor people?
Yes, I do.
Do you mentor people in your portfolio businesses or outside as well?
I do mentor. So I have a number of engagements. So I do mentor people within my organization.
Okay.
I'm also involved in a number of universities. So, for example, I'm part of the industry liaison board of the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Edinburgh.
Okay.
And part of it is actually engaging with first-year students. One of my former teammates is a teaching fellow at University College London.
Okay.
And I've basically he asked us to join a session with him with some of his first-year students that I've done.
Okay.
I'm also now recently, just 4th of May, I've been appointed to the board of governors of Teesside University. And again, that's another opportunity to work with our people, to exchange, learn from them, but also contribute my part.
Fascinating.
I do think that is a core part of it. And if you wish, it's not all at all altruistic, right? I've always discovered through my career that what really drives and motivates me is working with people and seeing them grow. There's nothing that can fill me with more, pride and deliver an amazing cocktail of endorphins that seeing the people that I've worked with and the people that I've, helped grow, achieve something, right, and perform really well. And that's something that I had since, in Germany, I used to be a coach for a youth team, age 10 to 12.
Football?
I remember the football, and when I took them on, I remember and I'm not lying, they lost every single game 6 to 8-0 or even more.
Right.
By the end of it, we managed to get the first win, and I will always remember the faces.
Right.
Their genuine joy. It was a day, it was actually very cold, it had snowed, and I won the first match away 1-2. And the faces in those 10, 11 years old at the time, something I'll never forget. And I guess probably, you become addicted to that. So yes, mentoring is a very important part of my life, and that's something that where I can put back.
Yep.
That's that opportunity.
I'm just intrigued. Did any of those students you mentored, or should I say players you mentored, go on to play for the German national football team?
No, to be frank with you, this was 15 years ago. I lost track. I'm a bit the black sheep in my family, by the way. So
really?
My father was a footballer, professional footballer. My uncle was a professional footballer, played in Spain's first league, and
nice.
Played in many of teams that are now part of the Primera División.
Okay.
I was never that good, I have to admit. I was a decent local league striker, but that was about it.
Right. Okay. But you're clearly doing really well. Do you have any investments in sports, by the way? You can do something in that space in a slightly different way. Leadership, management, investor.
Not yet, but this is something I look forward to. So there's obviously you always keep ourselves busy and think about a number of initiatives, and there are a few irons there in the fire that will probably open myself to those opportunities.
Few
That's
irons
something I
in
would
the
love to
fire.
go back to.
Right.
Few irons in the fire. Yeah.
So you mentioned few irons in the fire. We've all faced a major decision in our lives that has resulted in us choosing taking the left turn versus the right turn. And there are some pivotal moments which can either make you or break you. You mentioned one in our conversation about you giving up on the PhD to pursue other interests. Were there any other forks in the road, as they call them?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I was about to say, I don't believe in one single fork, right? I think you will get. The road will always be bifurcated at different times, and you always get this mammoth decisions that you need to make.
Yes.
The PhD was one of them that really followed me for a long time, and you have to think it was not only leaving then and doing that, but I generally thought that I might be able to finish it afterwards. It came to a point where I really had to decide. I could have still finished my PhD and put all my investment in that, or I could have pursued my MBA at London Business School.
Right.
And that was the moment where I really let go of it and said, "Listen, look, no, my interest is somewhere else. I'm a different person,
right?
And I want to do this." And that was the final moment where I let go of that particular path. I think there was also a moment in terms of choosing between a career and family. And in fact, back in 2005, this was about 4 or 5 months before we got married. I received an offer to go back to Germany and work for one of the largest chemicals companies in Germany, and brilliant role, exactly what I wanted to do back then. And my wife basically said, "Well, if you're going back to Germany, that would be without me, because I don't want to go there now." And I actually chose family. It was a hard decision. I have to say, I was not in the best of my moods for quite a bit of time, and I put a lot of strain in the relationship as well. Quite clearly, it was not that I took it on my stride.
I can empathize.
But that was a difficult one. I'm quite happy that I didn't. We're now in the UK. We have beautiful children, and God knows what would have happened otherwise.
Very good, very good. If you were to turn back time a little, further, and go back to the time you were 18, what advice would you give yourself, given everything that you've seen over the next 40 years, 50 years?
Yeah. Tricky. I would say, I think I would say like 3 things. One is, because I followed that very German pathway on education, right? That time I really thought that my future would be to become an engineer, become a scientist, just follow that path, join a large corporate and work your way up there. But being very, very technical in there, because that's what I was enjoying back then. I think my advice would have been, hey, broaden your horizon even a bit more. Think around, look into the business world. I think finance is something that I'm absolutely passionate about these days. And I didn't know of. You have to think again, growing up in the Canary Islands also means being very isolated for a certain markets and sectors. So I didn't have a clue about finance, corporate finance or markets and what difference it makes. So that's something that I wish I could have. Back then we didn't have internet, so you couldn't find out these things. So perhaps that's something I would have said, and also emphasize the value of entrepreneurship and the rewards of entrepreneurship. I think that's something that came to me much later. The other thing is, networking, how important that is, and how important it is just to continuously broaden your horizon, continuously build new relationships, and continuously, invest in those relationships. and because there's a huge value in being a connector, into understanding problems on one side, needs on the other, and solutions on the next, and being able to put that all together. And then finally, I think a very important point for myself would have been about something about not letting external or traditional metrics define you and define what you are.
Right.
Think about, we're in a system where you have to be very good at your A levels, and you have to reach the right university, and you have to work hard, and you have to get all these marks and so on. And to be frank with you, one thing that I learned is best professionals and more successful professionals that I've met 10 years on after university were those who actually couldn't care less about marks or degrees at university.
Just a metric. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an external metric that doesn't at all reflect what you're going to be. And I think it misleads a number of people in going in certain directions that are not the right ones. So that probably would be something that I think, particularly because of my personality and the competitive character that I have, it would have been good to someone give me that advice.
Fair enough. And again, great points made there. I'm conscious of time, so we've now come to that part of the podcast I like to call the rapid fire round, where I present two options, of which you choose the one that you prefer more between the two. Okay, off we go. 40 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit?
Okay.
Sorry?
Good. Hey, Keshav, sorry, sound has dropped. So
so let me repeat that. 40 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit?
If it's sport, I'll go for 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's for pleasure, I'll go for the 40 degrees Celsius.
Right. Nadal or Federer?
Oh, Nadal, of course.
You have to pick one.
I like them. I like the three of them. They're fantastic tennis players, and they've given me so much joy. But I would go with Nadal.
Okay. Cricket or rugby?
Rugby.
Sleep or meditation?
Sleep.
Barcelona or Barcelona?
Oh, that's easy. Real Madrid. No. But no, seriously, it would be just because of my accent. The Canadians, we don't say that. So it would be Barcelona.
Barcelona. Okay.
I think it fits well with the Catalan pronunciation anyway.
Yep. And it's going to be, the next question is going to be slightly difficult, but here we go. Beach or mountains?
Oh, I'm from the Canary Islands, and as much as I love the Alps, beach would be for me.
Right. Bach or AC/DC?
Very easy. I'm a metalhead, so AC/DC.
Lager or ale?
Lager.
And finally, book or podcast?
Your podcast.
Thank you. That's great answer. Great answer. Okay. To conclude then, if you, for argument's sake, step into my shoes, and if you would ask me a question about yourself that I didn't, what would that be?
Wow. That's a tricky one. I would say if I were, if you were to ask me what would be the key characteristics that define me in a way as I am today, I would say it's about that willingness to learn, right? Being open to continually learn from different people, different ideas. I think that's very important.
Right.
The other one is, about helping people in my team or colleagues to develop themselves, and particularly, obviously those that I have direct responsibility for within my team. That's something I deeply care.
Yep.
And then finally, what would I say? I think is that curiosity. Just trying to what would happen if we did this, which I think in a certain entrepreneurial setting is quite useful.
Yeah, let's see what happens if I press this big red button.
Exactly. Exactly.
Alfredo, thanks ever so much for your time today, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Just felt like the good old times, and I hope our audience did too. So yeah, thanks again for joining us today.
I've really enjoyed Keshav, so I hope the audience will like it as well. But it was great to spend this time with you. Thanks very much.
Great. Well, folks, that's all for today then. In another episode of A Done Deal. Thank you for listening in. And please do subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Signing off then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.